I think we'll go ahead and get started. I would guess we'll have more folks jump on, hopefully, as we go. If not, we'll be a small, intimate group, and it'll give you plenty of time for good engagement. Welcome. Happy Thursday. I am Amy Dessenberg Wines. I help manage the Iowa Coalition for Integration and Employment, and I am thrilled to have Julie Taylor with Griffin Hammis Associates with us for our fourth and final session in the Supported Employment series. And I can't thank you enough, Julie, for your willingness to do this and to give us, a good taste of some depth. A lot of times in the time that we have for these webinars, it just is an introduction. And I think even though we could go lots deeper in all of these, hopefully it has given people some information and tools by having a series that gives you a little bit more of a foundation. I want to also thank the Iowa Developmental Disabilities Council for their support in our closed captioning, and thank you, Heather, for our closed captioning and for our platform that we're using. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to you, Julie, and I will put the link to the presentation in the chat for folks. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Amy. Good to see everybody here. I'm just going to share my screen and get this going really quick. It's great to be with you, and we're going to pack a lot into our time together today. If you've joined us for any of the previous sessions, you know that we've been talking about self-employment, and we've talked about just, understanding what self-employment's all about and best practices related to self-employment. And then we've gone into some of the steps, kind of like the core steps of helping someone become self-employed and get a business off the ground. So we've talked about, getting to know the person and figuring out what might be a really good fit for them. We've talked about business concept development. We've talked about feasibility studies, determining whether or not a business has an opportunity to be successful. And then we've talked about creating a business plan. Once we've determined something's feasible, then moving into creating a business plan. And so what we're going to talk about today is what happens when we are ready to go, right? When this business appears to be a good idea, a good fit for the person, is financially feasible. We've created a plan, and now we're ready to launch the business, get it off the ground, and then maintain it. So we're going to cover as much as we can related to business launch and maintenance today. I want to remind you that through my work with Griffin Hammis Associates, we've been working on a 5-year-long project with the Rehabilitation Services Administration related to self-employment and building capacity in our vocational rehabilitation system so that counselors and community rehab partners and anyone else who wants to support someone through self-employment can learn a lot more about that. And so we have created a number of online trainings that are free to anyone. They are self-paced, so you could sign up for it and immediately get right in at 3 a.m. if you want to. It doesn't matter when you access them. They all come with CEU credits, if you need credit for work that you do, like ongoing continuous education type credit, they all come with that if you need that. But each one of those courses digs a whole lot deeper into all the different topics that we've been covering. So if you want to know more about business concept development or business launch or how to read a profit and loss statement, right? Really dig deep. You can engage in those courses. And before we're done today, I'll drop the kind of toward the end of our time together, I'll drop the website into the chat so that you can access those courses if you're curious about them. And we're each year of this 5-year project, we're adding new courses. So this year we've done a lot of work around feasibility, understanding feasibility, and getting those courses getting there. We've already done some of that previously, but we really went deep into that this year. Getting those things available to you. So remember, our hour and a half together is not enough to create expertise. It's enough to hopefully pique your interest. It's enough to hopefully let you see like what's possible and understand a little bit more about the challenges as well as the benefits, and just understanding what can be done with self-employment. That's really, my main goal is to leave you with a little bit of excitement and renewed interest in self-employment, and then hopefully a desire to learn more, and in whatever your capacity, be able to bring that to the people that you support, or at least advocate for that too. So let's talk about business launch and maintenance. Good stuff. Here, done something weird already. Okay, so objectives for today, things that we're going to try to go over. We want to understand the different types of business structures that someone might select. This is important information. Part of that launch is making decisions about what kind of business this is going to be. Just having some awareness of federal, state, and local registrations and regulations that someone might have to file or prepare for before they launch. Know how to help somebody with the rollout of their business as it, day one gets started. Identify some tools that you can use in record keeping, planning, and financing. Understand the importance of benefits planning as kind of one of those supports around someone as they launch a business. And then have, the ability to just tap into some of the resources that can provide business expertise and long-term support for business owners once they've started a business. So business launch, what does this mean? This is when the prospective business owner's ideal working conditions and the feasibility for the business concept all line up, and the business plan has been developed, and the team says, we are all in support of this. That would include like the referring source, like VR approves to move forward, if that's a person or a group that's involved. This has all been developed, includes all of the elements that are specific to the business, and it's time to say, let's go. Let's open the doors, right? Whether those are virtual doors or in-person doors out in the public, it means we're going to get this thing started. One of the considerations that we have to make as we're preparing to launch, and this typically is done sometime in the business planning process, but we want to make sure before launching that this is all really solid, because the decisions around business structures matter for a number of different reasons. So the selection of a business structure, and that what I mean by business structure is like the legal entity that this business is going to be. And every business, regardless of how small, just one person or has 500 employees, every business has a structure. And sometimes the structure is more informal and sometimes it's more formal. And the formality of it depends on the type of structure that you're picking. And so it's important to know what the business structures are and decide what's best for this particular person and for this business. Business structures affect a number of things. They affect taxes, how much a business owner will owe, how much, whether or not the owner is taxed on the business earnings or the business is separate from the owner. The type of structure determines that. The structure also impacts the ability to raise money. So that may mean that VR will only support certain types of business structures. It may mean that only certain types of structures are eligible for like a grant or for a loan or for an investment from some kind of investing organization. So structure impacts your ability to raise money, with different structures having different access to funding. Structures impact federal, state, and local filings, like what paperwork has to be completed or not. Some don't require much. what registrations need to be filed, whether or not a business name has to be filed, whether or not the business type of entity has to be filed, if there needs to be a vendor's license, if there has to be a sales tax account, if there has to be a tax ID number or an employer identification number. The structure has an impact on all of those different requirements. I'm going to check the chat real quick. Okay, that's from Amy. Good. Structure also impacts liability, whether the business owner is personally liable if something goes wrong, or if there are financial losses, or if the business owner is protected in some way. The structure that you pick has an impact on that. And then also, because we're working in kind of this service system, one consideration related to business structures that maybe some people who start a business who don't have disabilities have to think about is how a business structure might interact with their benefits, with SSI, SSDI, Medicaid, food assistance, all of those kind of things. There are different structures have a different impact on those benefits. And so again, with our little bit of time together, we may not get to be too specific about that, and go into a lot of times when I'm doing a talk, I'll do a whole session just on structures, and we go in and we look at the structures, and then we look at in depth at like, what kind of liability does this structure have? What is its impact on benefits? What kind of registrations does this one need? What local things might you need to consider? We're just going to kind of skim over that today. Just make you aware, I think, that of like what the primary structures are. And then if you are supporting someone, first and foremost, as I say all the time, make sure you have experienced business experts on your team that can help answer some of these questions. But you'll always want to make sure like what does your city require for somebody who has a certain type of business structure, or like what federal accounts have been created. All of that is really important to know and to think about before launch day. So I'm going to just kind of go over 5 main kind of common types of business structures, the most common types. The first is a sole proprietorship. And in a lot of work that we do with people with disabilities, this is probably the most common type of business startup structure that people have, but it's usually between this and the limited liability company. So we'll talk about sole proprietorship. This is an unincorporated business with one owner. That's typically the person who is doing the work, and it is definitely the easiest and least expensive business to form. In many states, there isn't even a requirement to like file with your state to say I'm a business. A lot of that is just kind of comes up at the end of the year when you're doing your taxes. With sole proprietorships, the business owner and the business are considered one and the same. So all of the money that comes into the as self-employment earnings through the business all belong to the business owner. And so at the end of the year, when there's taxes, the taxes are usually done filing like a Schedule C, which is talks about your business income and expenses and that, that sort of thing. But the business owner and the business are one entity. This also means that the business owner is not really protected in case of liability. If something goes wrong in the business owner is ultimately accountable. But for smaller, like micro enterprises, for like single owner operated business where like it's just me, I'm making cupcakes, I don't have any employees, like that sort of thing. This is definitely it's low risk. So there isn't a lot of liability, although some people do carry liability insurance separately, that professional insurance or some other kind of rider that does offer some protection in case of some kind of, something kind of risky. But anyway, the simplest doesn't require a lot of registration. Now, if a sole proprietor wanted to have a business name, they would need to register the business name. So if I'm Julie Taylor and me and my cupcake business are one and the same, that's fine. But if I want to call my cupcake business Hausfrau Cottage Bakery, which is what I called my catering company, you file that as a doing business as name registration. So sole proprietor, very, very common, especially with folks that we work with who are starting something very small and want to get it off the ground without a lot of red tape and registration requirements. Another type of business is a partnership, and a simple partnership is similar to a sole proprietorship. It can be between one or more people, also unincorporated. This can be easy, very inexpensive to form. There are two different types of partnerships. Typically, I mean, there can be more like subcategories, but there's a general and a limited partnership. And I won't go into too much detail about those, but there is some degree of a little slightly more complicated registrations when you come to having like a limited partnership, because that does come with some like liability protections and so on. But again, a partnership like a sole proprietorship very often doesn't have to have much done required for filing. It should have a name filed. VR will tend to support sole proprietorships. They'll support partnerships most of the time, as long as the business owner that's receiving services has 51% or more of the business. So they have a greater percentage of the business belongs to them. And then VR will only really support the investment in what that partner is going to be like responsible for. So they're not going to buy stuff for, that belongs to both partners. Everything will be kind of with that one partner. The third type of entity is also very common. This is the limited liability company, or LLC, a very, very common. It's slightly more complicated than a sole proprietorship, but it comes with added protections financially and when it comes to like risk, related to something that could happen in the business. It is kind of like a hybrid structure. It combines features of being a sole proprietor. It can combine features of being a partner. It can combine features of being a corporation. And limited liability company owners have an opportunity to kind of choose how complex they want the LLC. So there are different levels of LLC. It can be simple, kind of like a sole proprietorship, or it can be really complicated like a corporation. And so, again, LLC have different taxing requirements. And if you tend to operate it as a sole proprietorship, it's more, that's more typically funded by VR or other like authorizing agencies. If it's created more like a corporation, that gets a little bit more complicated. So a corporation is the most complicated type of business structures, and there are many types of corporations, but there are two main types that you hear of: a C Corp and an S Corp. A C Corp is the most complicated one to file and to create. And usually with a C Corp, well, always with a C Corp and with an S Corp, the business owner and the business are completely separated. In fact, VR typically will not support the development of a corporation because the person that starts the business isn't actually the owner. In a corporation, it's its own separate entity, and it's basically owned by shareholders or stakeholders. Now, the business owner can be the primary shareholder and also work for the business, but it's a really complicated relationship. So I owned a corporation, and what happens in a corporation is that even though I owned it, I didn't really own it. I wasn't an employee of it, right? So the corporation was my employer, and I didn't get self-employment earnings. I got paid a wage, a salary from that corporation. And so a corporation has to have employees. So it definitely gets very complicated. Generally not advised for somebody who's just starting a small micro enterprise. It would be really, really rare that they would need to form a corporation. It's very complicated. The taxing is completely separate. Your personal taxes, your personal earnings get taxed, the business earnings get taxed. It's called double taxation. It's fine in certain situations, but it's really complicated. And that's true for both a C Corp and an S Corp. And then the final type of entity to introduce is a nonprofit. And I want to mention it because sometimes people do come to VR or come for support in starting a nonprofit. And most of the time in most states I've worked with, nonprofits are not supported. Again, the reason is because there isn't an owner. As a self-employed person, you're not actually self-employed if you start a nonprofit. You're an employee of the nonprofit. A nonprofit is generally kind of owned or run by a board, right? And not by one person. They appoint an executive director, right, to kind of be the boss of the place, but that person isn't employed. They're not considered the owner. They're typically formed as a type of corporation. There's generally there has to be a mission, and to become like a legal nonprofit, you have to file as a nonprofit, and then you file at your state level, and then you typically also file at the federal level, and you tell them what kind of nonprofit you want to be. And there are dozens of types of nonprofits. You probably hear of a 501c3, right? It's very common. And every type of nonprofit is dictated by your mission. So if your mission is to be like the NBA, the National Basketball Association, or whatever, they're a nonprofit, but they're a certain type of nonprofit, a sporting nonprofit. Religious organizations are a type of nonprofit. Schools are a type of nonprofit. Your DD Council, a type of nonprofit. And so your mission, whatever that nonprofit exists for, that dictates the type of nonprofit. So anyway, it's, with it not being owned by a person, it's not something that we usually see coming through like our VR or our service systems, because it would require some kind of investment to get a business off the ground that doesn't actually belong to the person. The person just becomes an employee of it. So most commonly we see sole proprietorships and LLCs being supported in the kind of work that we do. So business structures and public benefits have a relationship. So this is for the people that we serve that receive some type of public benefits. Most business owners select their business structure based on tax and liability considerations that make sense for them. There are team members that we want to make sure that we consult with if we're helping somebody. So community small business resources like the SBDC, accountants, other like benefits advisors. These people understand a lot of these factors and like the tax and the liability considerations. So, having folks with that expertise on our team is really important. People who receive public benefits like SSI, Medicaid, SSDI, subsidized housing, childcare assistance, food assistance, really anything like a local or state benefit or a federal benefit. They have additional considerations when making their business structure selection, not just tax and liability, but like me personally, how am I going to be impacted if I really need these other benefits to be in place? So what we find is that a lot of times our community business and financial experts don't always know the benefits piece of things. So they, you may approach somebody from the Small Business Development Center and talk about your business concept and start talking about what kind of structure makes sense. It's unlikely they're going to factor in, let's talk about your housing assistance. They don't look at it from a benefits perspective. So this is why it's really important that somebody who is looking at being self-employed has some kind of referral or connection with somebody who is a certified benefits as analyst or a benefits planner, like a community work incentive coordinator, if you've heard of a CWIC. I'm curious if anybody here, like in our call today, is a CWIC, and if you want to drop it in the chat, let us know if you are, and if you've ever helped somebody with self-employment. I'm very curious about that. But so the people that we support are going to need that kind of referral as a kind of, I would recommend very early on, once they've started leaning towards self-employment. Honestly, in my work with customized employment, whether or not you're going to become employed by another business or start your own business, I always recommend get in with a business planner like right away, no matter what. Before you know what you're doing, before you know what you want to do during discovery, get that referral started in case you are in a community that takes a couple months to get in to see somebody. You want that expert to have a chance to get things rolling. But let's get that started, because it's even more complicated when we're starting to talk about self-employment, and everybody needs the reassurance that we're making the right decisions along the way. I do see a drop in the chat here. So this is Misty. Okay, awesome. Yay. So self-employment is always a fun adventure for your WIPA team. Great. I'm gonna take that as not sarcastic or anything. So good stuff. All right. So anyway, that's the main thing I want you to take away from that is self-employment and benefits do have some interaction, and get that referral started for somebody who's an expert. Another thing so we've talked about deciding on business structure. Another thing that someone has to start right before they're ready to launch is decide on whether or not they need business insurance. And I typically, business insurance or like self-employment insurance is not very expensive. I think that I've had, like, when I've owned a few different businesses, or started a few different businesses. And when I started my catering business, I was required to have like $1 million of liability insurance before I could like sell food to people, right? And it was a lot of times depending on like, if I was going through like a farmer's market, the farmer's market just had that rule or whatever. And I think that cost like $40 a month, or like paid for like $400 a year or something for that to be. So not very expensive. And in many states, that's something that VR can pay for as part of the startup cost, is pay for that first year of business insurance. General liability insurance is important. It helps protect a business owner from claims that the business caused, bodily injury, property damage, something like that from a customer. Commercial property insurance is important if the business has a physical location and or equipment that is valuable that could get damaged. That might be something to think about. Some self-employed people need professional liability coverage as well. So that's for things like more abstract risks, like errors and omissions in the services that you provide to people. So depending on the type of business and what the person is going to do will dictate whether or not they need all three of these kinds of insurance or just one. Like, let's just say you're a public speaker and that's the type of self-employment you want to do. Maybe you only need professional liability insurance in case somebody's going to come up against you, against something you say in public, right? And sue you for it. It stinks to have to think about that kind of stuff, but we have to. Especially for a really small business getting started, getting slapped with some kind of lawsuit is that's enough to put your business under, to kind of like halt everything. So paying up front for some type of business insurance is important. And before you launch and start selling those cupcakes, we want to figure out, do you need insurance and what does it look like? And has that been established? In my experience, setting up business insurance is a matter of finding that insurer and having a call with them, and they can get it started that same day. Typically not very, especially for a smaller business, not very complex. Another thing that people need to do as they're getting ready to launch the business is make sure they have their business banking set up. Some, especially sole proprietors, think that it'll just be easier to just use their personal bank account. And as a sole proprietor, you can do that if you choose to. However, I would say there are a couple different benefits to having a business bank, having business banking separate from your personal banking. First of all, it offers some protection. There's limited personal liability protection by keeping your business funds separated from your personal funds. Merchant services like credit cards and things like that, they also tend to offer like purchase protection and personal security for customers. So there's protection for the business owner as well. There's also a degree of professionalism that comes from having a separate business bank. Your customers can usually pay with credit cards. They can make checks out to the business instead of to you personally. Like if your business has a name, they're paying the business with the name instead of just to me. The owner can also authorize another person on their bank to help with day-to-day banking tasks on behalf of the business. So that's very helpful, especially when we're talking about some of the people that we support who may need help with the financial aspects, the bookkeeping, the banking, those things. It's helpful to, it is helpful to be able to name somebody else to help out with that. Another benefit of business banking is preparedness. Business banking sometimes comes with options for like emergency lines of credit that can help cover unexpected costs, which happen. You should expect unexpected costs in business. They happen all the time. I feel weird saying unexpected costs. Just expect them. So business banking sometimes comes with that ability to have like overdraft protection or like a small credit line or something attached to it. And then business banking also offers some degree of purchasing power, especially if you can have a credit card account. This helps the business make large, sorry, I've got a loud truck going by, I apologize. This helps the business if they need to make large startup purchases and establish credit history. I know a lot of people that we serve haven't always had that opportunity to establish credit history, and you definitely want your business to have a credit rating and to be in good standing. So business banking does all of that good stuff. Common business accounts include a checking account, often a savings account, so you can start putting your profit, like putting some profit away into that, a credit card account, and sometimes that merchant services account. Credit, debit transactions that many banks, when you start a business account, can help you get that kind of set up. And nowadays, no matter what you're doing for business, most people want to be able to use a credit card. And so it can be really helpful to have that, have that established. Each type of banking account definitely has its own elements to consider. Are there fees to have this account? Are there interest rates in the savings account? Are there minimum balance requirements? All of those are things people want to take a look at. One of the other benefits, I think, to business banking that I didn't add here, and this is one of the main benefits really, is just being able to keep your business income and your personal income separate, so you know how much is coming into the business, how much is going out via your expenses, and you have that all right there in your account. It's so easy to kind of go back and look at that if you've like delayed in making an entry into your like in your bookkeeping services or whatever. You can always go back to your business account and you don't have to sort through, oh, was that purchase at Target for me personally, or was that for my business? Like you can really keep that stuff separated. And that just makes the ease of understanding your transactions and keeping up with the bookkeeping that so much easier than if you were to just have your business account. Most of the time you can start up a business account for no money. I mean, I think that when I started my business account, like they required like a $5 deposit just to like set it up, and that was all that it was required. You don't need $10,000 or something. It's not like that. It's very simple. I'd also recommend, if you're helping somebody, that you take a look at business accounts through like your local credit unions. Sometimes they just offer special benefits. Like local credit unions do have the ability to have business accounts that can be helpful to just different better interest rates on the savings, or better ways of getting, like if you needed to get a loan, different things like that. It's definitely worth looking into. Another thing we do before launch is we make sure that we have all of the startup purchases that are going to be needed to open up our doors, our virtual or our real doors. Items that need to be purchased should be detailed in the business plan so that when we're ready to launch, we already have a plan for what we need to buy, how much we have researched that they cost, where do we think we're going to get them, comparison shopping that we've already done. That should have all been done as part of the business plan. And so as we're getting ready to launch, we're actually getting our hands on those items. We also have to have a plan for how they're going to be purchased. How are they going to be funded? Typically, if you're working with VR, you have been working in close coordination with your VR counselor when making that business plan. So you've already been talking about, okay, we're going to need to buy an electric mixer, and we're going to need to buy 500 boxes, and we're going to need to buy these other supplies. And this have all been line item detailed in advance as part of the plan. And so there's been some agreement about what VR is open to funding and like how much. And there's probably been some other plan around, did you have access to a startup grant? Is your DD counselor, did they have did they have some kind of startup program going on? I have helped somebody start a business where our county board here in Ohio funded a few items. We made a request to them because this person wasn't working with VR, and we made a request that the person would get work gloves, some new boots, and a couple other supplies to get things started, and they funded that. There are a number of other funding opportunities. I think we'll cover them as we spend a little bit more time together today. But definitely, knowing in advance, what do we need to buy? How much is it going to cost? Who's helping us pay for it? Or did we have to contribute? Like, are we using a credit card, or is our family member giving us a loan, or, whatever it is, all that's already planned out. And now we start to get that staff so that we can actually have what we need to do the work. Any items VR is purchasing, that should be agreed upon. Typically, VR does not just hand a prospective business owner a check for $5,000 to here, go buy your stuff. Usually, in my experience, it flows through like a partner. As for like reimbursement, like, so when I've helped someone start a business, typically through my organization, we will purchase something and then VR will reimburse us, but it's all agreed upon. Never purchase anything that you don't have like a written plan authorizing that. You get stuck with, a big piece of equipment that nobody said was okay. You don't want to do that. You got to stay within the budget. You got to stick to the plan. The caveat to that is you can never stay within the budget. It's just impossible. Everything always costs more than you expected, and you need more than one. It's broken. Whatever, you have to go back and forth. This has just happened. I love this idea of contingency planning. Everything costs more and takes more time than you ever expected. So plan accordingly and make sure that everybody's on the same page. What do you do if this isn't enough? And then try to stay within your budget. After that, stick to the plan. Purchase the items in advance to make sure that they can be obtained on time. If you have a product that you need to make before you can launch and sell it, that planning process has to be like, how much time do I need to make enough pot holders, right, to sell at this farmer's market? It's going to take me a month. You need to make sure that you've got all your supplies early enough so that on sale day, you're ready to go. So purchase everything you need in advance to get started. Once purchased, you also have to make sure that everything works as expected. This is a part of getting ready for launch day. You don't want to just unbox something when you've arrived at your first customer's house to find out that it was a faulty chainsaw. You don't want that. That happens. So we test things out in advance to make sure everything works. So how do we roll out day one, day-to-day operations once we've done all this good stuff? This should be based on the operations and management plan that was created in the business plan. When we talked about this a month ago. So if you weren't here for that, go back and listen to the session on business planning. We talk a little bit about this. That plan is basically the operations section of that business plan is basically like a task analysis for what goes down to make and deliver this product step by step. We start baking at 5 a.m. Here we can make sure all our supplies are ready. We just go down exactly what has to be done. And typically before launch day, we've done the operations. We've been practicing the operations so that on launch day, we don't find that it actually took 3 hours longer than expected. Definitely, I think that when we make the business plan, we should build in some cushion time for anything that we're doing. Because again, I think everything just tends to take longer. There's traffic, there was a line, whatever it is, takes longer. But the rollout day one really should be based on what we put in that plan and what we've been practicing up until it's time to launch. Even like this is important for sole proprietors, single owner operators, but this is also important for like large restaurants. A lot of times they have that dry run, right? Where they invite a few customers and they're not open to the public, but they practice. How is it going to go? And everybody gets a chance to try things out to get a feel for what works. And at the end of those practice sessions, they say, okay, how did that go? Disaster? Okay, what are we going to change? Right? Or that was really smooth. What went well so that we can continue to do things that way. So this is what somebody needs to be doing in preparation for the day. It's a rollout. It's not like a big ta-da, right? We should be working our way up to saying we're ready now for customers. We want to consider all the activities that must be done, have that dry run or that test run, and do the activities, go through all of the steps in advance. It can be helpful to have a calendar, like a countdown calendar leading up to the launch day of the business. Just like with real specific things that should be accomplished each day. Ensure that anybody who is committing to support in some way knows their role, knows their expectations, and is available for all of these rollout operations. So if in our business plan, if you recall, when we talked about feasibility, we talked about the importance of the business has to be a good fit for the person. The person has to have the supports that they need, and it has to be financially feasible. The supports get written into the business plan, and we name them. We don't just say, I'm going to have somebody help me with running the credit card machine. We say, Amy is going to run the credit card machine, right? And so we need to make sure that before launch day, that Amy's still in on the deal, right? That Amy's still going to show up and do what she said she was going to do, and that she knows how to do it. So we want to make sure that there's, if there's going to be a transportation provider that helps somebody get where they need to go. If there's somebody who's running the social media and sharing, hey, today's our day one, here's what's going on, and taking pictures and making sure that, we're using that as a great marketing tool, that person, Heather, is taking care of that. And we know by name that Heather has been contacted and committed and is going to show up. There should be a specific launch plan. This can be really helpful. This could even include like a kickoff on social media. It can include an advertising blitz. It can include an in-person events, balloons, free popcorn, whatever it's going to be. But we want to have a plan, for what that looks like for this particular business. We also then want to prepare for sales. As we know, we don't really have a business unless we're selling something, a product or a service, unless there's going to be money coming in. So we want to be prepared for that. That means that in advance of launch, that bookkeeping tools and supports and whatever way we've decided we're going to do our bookkeeping, that's all lined up and good to go. That there's a calendar and scheduling tools if we need that for let's just say that we are running a new landscaping company and we need to be able to know when we're going to Jacqueline's house, when are we going to Damien's house? What are we doing? We need to have some kind of process for that. So are those things in place? Do we have inventory of product available if we're going to be doing something that's a product-based business? Do we have the tools and the supplies in working order to make the product or to do the service? We're going to double check that stuff. Do we have clothing considerations? Do we know in advance what we're going to wear as part of running this business? If maybe we decided we were going to have special t-shirts, or we wanted to dress up, whatever it is, right? So we want to make sure that that's all ready to go, that somebody's thought about what are you going to wear. Are the social media accounts set up and ready to be run? And I would say in our modern world, almost everybody should have some type of social media account. That's a way that we reach our customers. A lot of times free way, unless we're going to be buying ads or whatever, but using our Facebook, our LinkedIn, our Instagram, both personally and having them set up professionally for our businesses is really important. You got to have some way of outreach, and that's the main way we do outreach nowadays. We want to make sure that if we needed marketing materials like business cards or like a flyer or anything like that, that's all been planned for and created and available. We need to have that some ability to take payment. And I think I mentioned this earlier, like it's rare that small businesses are cash only nowadays. A lot of people will want to pay with a credit card, or they'll want to write a check. You can run a business cash only, but you're going to have to be very, very clear about that, because I don't know if any of you are like me, like I'd never have cash. I just never have cash. I went to a conference last week where I was a speaker with NDRN, which was real cool, National Disability Rights Network, and forgot you need cash to tip people who are helping you with stuff. Like you got to make sure you have that. It's just so rare nowadays. So anyway, what kind of payments are you going to accept? What's your ability to take payment? Even if you're going to take cash payments, you got to have some secure box or something where you're going to keep that. And then, if you're taking credit cards, or if you're just using like your phone and like a Square reader, or maybe even accepting Venmo. Like I've worked with small businesses where I've made purchases and they do that through Venmo or Zelle or Cash App that goes directly to their bank account. That's fine. If somebody wants to do that, there's no fees with those things. Credit cards do come with some fees. So, just decisions about that, and then making sure you're ready, that those accounts are all set up. And then of course, any individualized support that the person needs, we want to make sure is that ready. Business specific support, or if the person needs support, like if they need a personal care attendant, or if they need transportation, or if they need somebody to help them with their medication, is that all established before we launch and we know how that's going to work? Those person-centered considerations are very important. Another thing when we're preparing for sales is just to make sure that everybody who is going to be interacting with the customer has an idea about what they want that to look like. And this understanding of customer service is important, and having just before day one, just kind of talking about having a positive attitude. Everybody, when it comes time to launch, is a little bit stressed out. There's so many unknowns, even if you've practiced, now that you're kind of in a live environment, showing up at your first customer's house, going to, opening the doors of your new office, going to a farmer's market where you've set up a table, you've already been working for 3 hours to get ready, or longer. And now you're there, and now you're going to start interacting with customers and you're already tired. So preparing to have that positive attitude, on the part of the business owner and anybody that's there providing support, being really positive, representing the business and the business owner. And having a positive attitude means being committed to excellence, in all areas, from the quality of the product or the service to our demeanor, staying passionate and excited about what you're doing, not like, oh my gosh, I've already been doing this for 3 hours. It has to be like, I'm not tired, right? I'm here ready to do this. So staying passionate about the product or the service, loving what you do and being able to talk about it, being eager to meet the needs of the customer. This is how we get paid. It's providing them with something they want or need, and being eager to do that. Like you can be in love with making cupcakes. That's awesome. It doesn't turn into a business until you love selling the cupcakes to someone. That's when it turns into a business. And so that's an important part of things. Staying committed to problem solving, because there will be problems. You could run out of something and a customer wants to know why, or it could be a little bit melty because it was a hot day, or, they had something they needed, they were doing landscaping and they had something that was more difficult for you to deal with than you expected. Staying committed to problem solving in making the customer happy, and then also ensuring that your product or service is still delivered with high quality. That's important. Not like this is resilience, incredibly important for a business owner and or their team to be able to be resilient, to say, we're going to solve this problem and then keep going, right? Because there will be problems along the way. It's also helpful to have an energetic, positive, friendly, and informative elevator pitch that is simple and to the point, so that everybody who's there, either the business owner, if they want to talk to people and represent themselves, and some don't. Some people just want to make the product and have other people help them with their sales. That is totally cool. You don't have to do customer service if that's what you want support for. That's part of why we talk about support. But if anybody that's interacting with the customer should be able to just briefly say, here's what this business is called, here's what we do, here's this cool thing that you're going to get out of it. That's the basic 20-second type of elevator pitch that we can give to customers to kind of catch them and pique their interest and help them to want to buy things from us. We also want to make sure that we have marketing and advertising planned and ready to roll out. This again should have been established in that business plan to make sure that we've talked about the different ways that we want to market. Marketing means connecting with the customer. That's all that it really means, is how do you bring the product to market? Market is actually in a brick and mortar. Market is through your website. Market is through Facebook sales, through Facebook Marketplace. The market is any place that you're going to connect with the customer. It can be from your home. It can be at their home. If you're going to their home to provide a service, that's your market. So we want to make sure that we've reviewed the business plan, that we have a strong marketing plan. That's a component of the business plan that talks about specifically how is this business, what are the various ways we're going to reach the customer. We want to think in terms of what the customer is going to be seeing and hearing from us, so that the business owner understands that marketing's not just about selling something. In order to be successful in reaching the customer, there are other considerations, like just increasing awareness, letting people know you're here now, right? It may not immediately result in a sale, but it could down the line, or it could be somebody saying, I've heard about this new landscaping company. I haven't used them, but I got this flyer. Here's their number, right? People passing off the information, but just increasing awareness, really helpful. You want to develop demand so that customers are like, oh, yeah, I need that. I want that. You're going to be trying to convince a potential customer that the product or service you are selling is something they need, something they want, something they will value. Marketing helps us to ensure that everything the customer is going to encounter, the packaging, a logo, the vehicle that we use to transport, the way something smells or feels or tastes, all of these things are part of marketing. And we want the customer to be thinking about things like, it's easy for me to get this. The price makes sense for me. I can use this. It's relevant to my life. So everything that we do has to be thinking about the customer's experience of our product or our service. There are 4 P's in marketing. Well, there's 5, actually. There's a little surprise one. So the 4 ones we talk about a lot of times are the product. What is it? Tell people about it. Make sure it's amazing. The price, which has to be, we think about who our customer is when we decide on a price. And this is all done during business planning. So we don't just do this day before. I think I'm going to charge $5 for this. We've really thought it out. We've looked at how much does it cost to make it, and then whatever profit margin we want, and we've added that in. And we also think about, am I selling this in an upscale neighborhood where someone's willing to pay a lot more for this, or am I looking at a customer that really likes like a value, that it's seems like it's, they're getting a deal. Like we think about who our customer is, when determining the price, and that's part of marketing. The place where we're gonna market, again, is it from home? Is it at someone's house? All these ideas. The promotion, that's the packaging, that's all of the hoopla surrounding the product. That's the balloons, that's the cards we're handing out, that's the free samples we're giving on day one. That's the promotion that really kind of gets everybody's attention. And that fifth one, is sometimes referred to as the purple cow. That's what is so exciting about this that nobody else is offering? What is our little special niche that we are bringing to you? I mean, it could be that it's buy one, get one free, right? It could be that this is all from local ingredients. Everything is sourced from a local dairy, and it could be that we use all organic materials, or we built this from scratch, something like that, that really sets it apart, so that when someone is looking at like buying cupcakes from 4 different places, yours is the most interesting to them. That's that fifth element of marketing. So I'm going to pause real quick before we move on to talking about maintaining. And are there any questions related to the launch? I mean, that's a whirlwind view of launching. The key things I think that are takeaways are, have that team, business expert team, have the team, some people that can help with the benefits assessment, and then really make sure that business plan that was done as the prior step that's already been approved serves as the roadmap, and that we go back to it as we're making the decisions and getting ready to launch. Any thoughts, any questions or comments? All right. Let's take a deep breath and move into maintaining the business. All right. So the final step is we've launched. It's open for business. We've got it up and running. It takes ongoing effort to successfully maintain a business. That deep breath we took isn't because we can just be like, okay, it's done now, right? Now we have a business. Okay, so it's not done. We have ramped up to it. Now we can't take a break. Unless we've written a break into our business plan and we have supporters that allow us to take a break and they cover things for us. But it takes ongoing effort to successfully maintain a business. So we're going to talk about activities like inventory, monitoring financials, filing tax returns, making sure the business owner has the ongoing support that they need in whatever area to continue to be successful. We make that business plan as the roadmap, and it leads us to launch, but it also has built into it what the person is going to need to stay in business. That's the point. The point of supporting somebody to start a business isn't to just start a business. It's to have a job, right? That's sustainable and that makes sense for this, for this person. So during business planning, one of the things that we did was we really worked on financials, and we did projections, right? So we did that even during feasibility study. We started thinking about what's it going to cost? How much can we reasonably expect to sell? What does the business owner need personally to earn? And we made up numbers. Now, informed, right? We did some research related to that, but it's our best guess. So during planning, we based these projections on our best guess, some assumptions related to what's it going to cost? What do we think? How many units do we think we might sell? What's our capacity? So we tried our best. After we launch, we start using actual numbers. We start looking at how many did we sell today? How much did people pay for that? And then we compare those to the projections. So our projections, typically we do that like on a monthly basis. And so when we're launching a business, we're really looking at like daily, what's happening daily. What did I sell today? What did I book today? What did I sell the next day? And because we don't want to get to the end of the month and do a comparison and realize, oh, in the second week we sold nothing. We want to be really paying really close attention to what's going out and what's coming in. But we start doing a comparison, like what is the actual money we're bringing in? What is the actual expenses that we have? How does that compare to our projections? Where are we maybe ahead of the game, earning more than we expected? Where did things like our expenses cost more because we needed to buy a second something that we hadn't planned for? The business owner is ultimately responsible for tracking and reporting financials. I would say, though, that this is the area where most business owners need the most help. Even if you don't have a disability, this is the most complex part of running a business, is ensuring all of the financial elements are taken care of accurately, according to whatever rules and regulations there are. And in a very timely manner, and many people need that. This is why, large corporations have accountants on staff. It's not because the business owner has to do it all themselves. So there should be some level of expectation that business owners are going to need support with tracking and reporting their financials. This is really important for Social Security and the IRS. Sorry, my little business partner here is barking at my daughter. Accurate information. This is an added issue that people with disabilities who receive benefits have. It's not just maintaining your own business financials, but it's ensuring that you have accurate records for anything related to Social Security, anything related to taxes, anything related to like Medicaid or, and any other benefits they're going to need in business banking to be done accurately. Accurate financials are necessary to monitor income and expenses to ensure that the company is making enough money to stay in business and to also meet the business owner's goals and needs. There are lots of financial records, but there are 4 really common types of financial records. And I'm not going into detail. If you really want to learn about profit and loss statements, check out our website for that free training. There are full modules on each of these kind of financial statements, but most businesses need to have a profit and loss statement. And if you have a big giant business or a small business, it's still laid out the same way. These are templates that you can easily find online. They're like usually Excel, or if you purchase some kind of like a bookkeeping software like QuickBooks or something else like that, it's all built into that. So there's a profit and loss statement. It's also called an income statement. It helps the owner and the team and funders, if necessary, see a business's performance over a specific time. It can be weekly, it can be monthly, it can be yearly. If somebody has investors or lenders, they can see the expenses and the sales and the profit margins. There's also the balance sheet. This is based upon an equation: assets equals equity plus liability. It shows that the owner, and let's see here, the owner, the team, the funders, they all can see the business assets, liabilities, equity, as well as the overall position of the business for whatever established period of time. That is really important. We also have a cash flow statement. This is really important because it shows us what kind of money is available for purchases if we need to make purchases. And it shows us over time if the business has enough money coming in to cover the expenses and to pay the business owner. And then there's also just something very simple called a break-even analysis. This is something that is a financial calculation that compares the costs of the new business against the unit selling price to determine the point at which the business will have sold enough to cover costs. It basically is when money coming in equals money going out and you're not at a loss or at a profit. It's like that starting point to begin making profit. So financial records. Now, wash that out of your mind because that's going to clog you up if you're not a financial person, right? And we'll move on a little bit. And again, I encourage you to read more about that before you help somebody use those things. There are different methods for tracking all of this. I've already mentioned like accounting software like QuickBooks. There are other options. I personally always used QuickBooks. I just found that it was not very expensive. There are different, you can have an online version or a desktop version, usually costs like $300 a year, something like that. Maybe it's gone up since the last time I paid for it, but it's really user friendly. And what it does is all those different financial statements, when you make an entry, those carry over. Like you don't have to make a separate entries for profit and loss or for business or balance sheets. You make an entry on your, like on a ledger, which is like your, where you put in, I sold this much today, I spent this much, that all gets calculated without you having to do anything. It gets put into each of these different types of financial records for you. So that the ease of use to me was always worth that kind of paying, for a year of that. So the tracking system someone chooses, though, that's a really personal choice, depends on their skills, depends on the supports that they have around them. Some people, I went to a farmer's market on Saturday and bought something from a local farmer who's only cash, and he has a ledger, a paper ledger where he records, hand writes every sale. And this was at a large kind of urban farmers market, and that's still how he does his business. And I was like, that more power to you, buddy. That's a lot of calculations you got to do later on. But he's just doing it all that way. One of the benefits, I think, of using if you're using a credit card, is it's capturing those sales for you, so that later on, sometimes that can even be like with QuickBooks, you can link that right in to your accounting software. So it's just, all you do is turn your computer on and go in and see, and the work is already done for you. So, it really just kind of, I guess it kind of depends. It's important for people to have a method for saving receipts, invoices, bills, accounting statements, banking, credit cards, all that information. Make sure that support continues to be available, especially after like VR closes the case successfully. There should be a plan in place for how and when and who is helping with the financials. We want to make sure that somebody is helping, if the person needs this, with tracking SSI, SSDI, any other related financials, different Social Security work incentives. That should have been something that we found out what the person has access to during that meeting with the CWIC, the work incentive coordinator, that could help determine what kind of work incentives and what do we need to provide as proof for those things. The most important objective with financials is just whatever method is ensure the records are kept timely, comprehensively, accurately, and that we have the right support from financial experts. I'm going to check the chat real quick. Oh, we're good. Oh, thank you, Amy. So Amy put in the chat the Center on Self-Employment training link. So if you're curious and you haven't captured that before, make sure you just grab that and copy that and take advantage of everything that we have there for you, and check it back regularly, because we had 6 new courses every year. Another thing that we do with maintenance is maintain those day-to-day operations that we practiced for, that we used on launch day. And now that we're maintaining, we want to take a look back at that business plan. It serves as the roadmap for continuous success, but sometimes once we get going with the business, we realize that we have to change what we had planned. Maybe our plan, maybe we have more customers, or we've added an extra market, or we've had to get a different type of help or support, or maybe we've learned how to do something ourselves and we don't need support for it anymore. It's important to use that business plan, but we don't have to be fully married to it forever. We can come back and amend it and change things based on what the business needs. So the flow of day-to-day operations and management, this is how the work gets done. It's how the product is made, it's how the service is delivered, and then it's how we handle all of those managerial tasks like banking, social media, those types of things. And that is all. There should be a schedule for when all of these things are taking place, so that this continues to just move forward smoothly. We want to revisit the operations and management section of the business plan regularly. Think about, are things going according to plan? Are new efficiencies being discovered? Have we just learned how to do things more smoothly? Are new supports or supplies needed? Is the business owner gaining those new skills, or maybe they've become accustomed to different working conditions, and so they're maybe more flexible in a certain area, or maybe they've realized, I don't like working outside anymore, like I don't want to do that, so I need to change, where I'm meeting my customer. Are changes needed in any aspect of how the work gets done? So we want to revisit these regularly. I've mentioned this idea of contingency planning, so I want to just go into it a little bit more here. So even like as we're launching, there's lots of things we're going to learn don't go according to plan, and we have time before we launch to fix them. However, once we launch, things are still sometimes not going to go according to plan, and we need to be, because we're already open for business, we need to be willing to pivot or be flexible as much as we can. So even when operations of a business are clearly defined, challenges arise. This is inevitable. It's part of living as a person. And it's definitely part of running a business. So sometimes challenges are due to poor planning. Like we just were like, oh, I'm not going to worry about that right now, right? Or that was too hard to deal with. I'll deal with it when it happens. And then it happens and we're like, oh my goodness, I don't know how to deal with this, right? I most of this, I'm just telling you, I'm speaking from experience. So if I break down in tears, you'll please understand. I have lived this, right? Others are related to fluctuations within the economy. Like there was a market for this before, and then there's been a recession or whatever's going on, a pandemic, right? And can you imagine if you started a business in like February of 2020 and like you were just, those restaurants that were just opening and those people that bought all of their inventory because they were going to go out and, do whatever they're going to do. And then the world just shut down, right? Thankfully, there were some great pandemic financial safety nets that got put into place really quickly. That I know for my company, that was really helpful. But anyway, so there can be challenges where we expected to have customers, either, a certain number of customers, and we either didn't get as many or we got more than we thought we were going to get. And now we got to figure out how we're going to serve them. Some challenges stem from machinery breakdowns. You're supposed to go out and chainsaw some trees and there's something going on with your chainsaw today. Others occur due to breakdowns in communication. Like we just don't have, we have supporters that are, that we have planned to help us, and somehow people didn't know where they were supposed to be, or they stopped showing up, or you don't know how to reach a customer. All these things happen. Communication breakdowns are very common. It's possible to plan and prepare for these occurrences to some degree. It doesn't mean we can fully prevent them, but we should have a contingency plan for what happens. We want to know what happens if our machinery breaks down, if there's a machinery breakdown before the machinery breaks down, right? Do we need two of something? What happens if weather prevents us? Like, let's just say, and this happened to me, I was baking pies for a farmer's market, and I baked like 25 pies, and then an unexpected gigantic storm rolls through, and they notify everybody they're shutting down the farmer's market that day, and I have 25 pies. Huge investment financially and my time, and they're perishable, right? So what am I going to do about that, right? So what happens if there's weather? What happens if our supplier can't provide the supplies that we need? What happens if our inventory is damaged? What happens if our sales are lower than expected? What happens if our sales are greater than expected? What happens if that perishable product isn't sold? What happens if there's unpredictable transportation that didn't show up? And this is going to be something that many people we serve deal with. What happens if the cost of our supplies goes up, right? And we did some projections related to here's how much we researched and found that this costs, and they've just bumped it up by $1 per item, which now then we have to think about, do we take a cut in our net on our gross profit, or do we then have to raise our prices? And then would that still meet the needs of our customers, right? What if we're ill, or if there's some kind of injury of the business owner and they can't do what they were going to do? So those are just some common things that happen on a day-to-day basis that we want to try to have a plan for. Also, when it comes to maintaining a business, we have to think about licenses and permits. So we already talked a little bit about how business entities determine the types of registrations we have to have, but also the kind of the work that we're doing, regardless of the entity. It could be a sole proprietor or an LLC. We may be doing work that requires a license. Like you might be doing something where you have to be licensed by your health department. You might be doing something where you have to have like a permit to work on someone's property. You might have to have a sales permit. A lot of times your counties require you to have like a vendor license where you pay like $50 or something, and that gives you permission for a year to be a vendor. So that should all be researched in advance, but those have to be maintained. A lot of those things are like maintained annually. So the required licenses, permits, these all depend on the kind of activity somebody is doing, the location they're doing it in, and it varies from state to state. It could vary from city to city. Maybe in some areas of your state, you have to have a license and some you don't. So that should be figured out and then also maintained. States and cities tend to regulate more than federal government does. You don't go to the federal government for a vendor's license. That's a local decision, a local application. There are certain types of things that are monitored and have more strict requirements, like if you want to be an auction runner or a construction worker or a dry cleaner or a plumber or a restaurant worker. Those are some things that require a lot of local specific licenses and permits, a little bit different than, somebody who's coming to weed your garden, perhaps. Some licenses and permits expire after a set period of time. It's really helpful to make sure that the person, as part of their planning calendar, that they have, due dates for those types of things so that they don't expire. Because if they expire, you're not allowed to do business until you have that renewed, and that could take a while. File and apply early. Sometimes these involve fees, but typically these local licenses and permits are not very, I'm going through this real quick just to see what else I want to try to cover with you before we run out of time. Well, give me just a second. I went too far ahead or too far back. So taxes, another thing that people need to be paying attention to all the time. There are federal, state, and local requirements. Again, depends on your business structures. There are always deadlines. These are critical because for a sole proprietor who doesn't have a huge profit margin, you don't want to be wasting money on fines and penalties for being late with anything. Depending on the type of business, there are income taxes. There are employer taxes if you have any employees. Sometimes you have a workers' compensation fee that you have to pay. Sometimes you have unemployment taxes that you have to pay. Sometimes taxes are monthly, sometimes they're quarterly, sometimes they're annually. All depends on the way you've set your business up. Again, something that has to be kept on a schedule. Make sure that the person knows when those things are due. This would also be an area that I hope that everybody has good support for with maintaining taxes. Maintaining sales and marketing. We've talked about marketing being that management process, the way that we get a product to a customer. It's our act of connecting the product or service to somebody who wants it enough to pay for it. So this involves ongoing communication, maintaining that marketing plan, adjusting it if it's not working. So every once in a while going back and saying, am I getting any hits on my Facebook? Is anybody coming to me that way? Whatever ways we've decided that we're going to try to reach somebody, we want to think about, is this effective or should I try something new? Marketing never ends. We're always trying to reach new customers. There are very few businesses that can be sustained solely on repeat customers. So we have to constantly be trying to reach new people. This requires building relationships and staying relevant and being accessible by the customer. There are some elements of ongoing marketing. I'll just kind of skim through these. Again, I would encourage you to look at our trainings and learn more about marketing. But elements of ongoing marketing are like, how are you branding, representing the company? And is it sticky? Means, does it catch the eye of the customer? Does it reach them in a way that makes them feel like like there's something else if they buy your product, because they felt like it was really valuable. There are just, positioning, like where you're targeting your customer, how you're networking and getting to know other business leaders and in your community, how you've decided to make a pricing of your product, how you've differentiated it, the purple cow element from all the other people that do similar work. Who is your target market, how you're messaging. These are all parts of ongoing marketing consideration. And you don't have to have an MBA to figure this stuff out. You just need to know what they are and be able to plan around them to do good marketing. It doesn't have to be super expensive or, have advanced degrees to do that. Sales are really important. So we want to think about our business projections as a quota, like we're trying to reach this. And hopefully we do even better than our business plan had anticipated. I've said this before, monitor those sales on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. How do they measure up to what we were looking at before? Are the sales bringing enough money that the business owners can make decision around supply and demand? Can I produce more? Do I need to pull back and make less? We think about things like how much of a product was sold on a certain day of the week versus, how much is sold during a specific time or at a special event. When I was running my company, my little mini catering company, I just did it for a couple of years. I would think about I was doing multiple farmers markets, and then I was doing catering different events like weddings. And I would always be looking at which farmers market was I getting more bang for the buck? Like, where was I going that I could count on there being customers and making more sales? And then I eliminated, a farmer's market if it wasn't bringing in enough money to, make it worth my time. But I wouldn't have known that until I got out there and tried it and then just made adjustments. Same is true for like online sales. We take a look at like how much is sold, when are people buying things, and then how do those sales measure up to our projections. Customer feedback. This is really important in ongoing maintenance of the business. Constantly asking the customer for their opinion, for their experience with the product or the service, for them to give you like a shout out or put a sign in their yard that says that you were there if they're proud of the work that you did. We want feedback, even if it's constructive criticism, because that helps us to improve. And so that's something to help people learn, is that it's all right if things didn't go well. That is okay. Get the feedback and figure out how to incorporate that into your ongoing maintenance. Satisfied customers come back. Satisfied customers will tell a couple of people about their experience with you. Unsatisfied customers will not come back, and unsatisfied customers tend to tell a lot of people about you. Like, it doesn't balance out. Satisfied, there's been research into this where satisfied customers will tell between like 1 and 3 people about their experience, whereas like unsatisfied customers are putting it on Facebook and they're telling their 300 followers that you did a terrible job. They should never come to you, right? Or they're telling 10 people that they know when they're getting together with them because they're really unsatisfied. We want people to be satisfied. Customer feedback, when considered thoughtfully, this gives us great insights into how we can improve. It also gives us a chance to say, I am so sorry if it didn't go well. Let me find a way to make that better for you. Then you have a satisfied customer. That'll ultimately lead to more sales. Kind of talked about that. There is a point where a lot of businesses during maintenance may get to thinking about, if things are going well, that they want to start growing, right? So this is something we refer to like line extensions or add-ons. So businesses may consider it's time to add additional products or services. Maybe like for me, I just started with pies, and then customers started asking, what else do you do? So then I added cakes, and I added cupcakes, and I added specialty cookies. I started with just farmers markets. I moved into doing special events, private orders, that kind of stuff. And that was once I got established. And the customer said, I'd like something else from you. And I said, I will do that, right? So businesses may consider adding additional products or services. I would say once they've established some sustainability with their core plan, then moving forward is fine. Sometimes this is entirely new products or services, items that supplement or complement existing products. It's important to do kind of go backward and do a little bit of concept development and feasibility study related to those additional products. This does tend to increase our costs at first where we're starting something new. So there are a number of different considerations. Sometimes the customers love it, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're unsure, and the sales are really slow. So there's lots of considerations to that. Inventory is another consideration for ongoing maintenance. This is where the business owner is going to learn about what do they need to, how much they've had, a few months of sales and the ebb and flow. So how much they need to keep on hand, how much they need to invest in having enough inventory available. This has to be monitored and documented regularly, and these are all like costs and expenses that have to be accounted for on the financial statements. I'm going to skip over inventory management for the sake of time. Maintaining support also includes ensuring that there's ongoing funding. And so this again is, typically we've planned for this, but as a business gets moving, we have to revisit it. How much is the business owner contributing? How much they need? Are they getting any money from family or friends? Do they have money that's coming into the business that they're putting back into the business for further investing? We call this bootstrapping. Is VR, VR will typically help out up front, but they're not going to continuously fund this business. And so we have to factor that if there's new purchases, once that case is closed, typically VR is not going to be involved. There are some work incentive, like the plan to achieve self-support, the PASS plan through Social Security can help. Individual development accounts, read about those in your community. Sometimes those can be used for matching funds. There can be loans, crowdfunding, grants. A lot of these are important, especially if someone has sales that are slower than expected and they need some cash infusion. Having a plan for this and then knowing how to get it as the business is maintained. And then we've talked about the importance of benefits planning already. It's not a one and done thing. I mean, we definitely need to get that initial benefits assessment, establish a relationship with a certified work incentive coordinator or a benefits analyst that's well trained and certified, and then have those regular check-ins, because as the business grows, there are things you're going to want to be watching for when it comes to your Social Security and your Medicaid and your any other public benefits that you receive. So that is an ongoing aspect of benefits planning and monitoring. You will have access to these slides. What I've included here is like a list of different things that should be considered in benefits planning, like, what are the IRS rules for each type of business structure? What is an expedited reinstatement of benefits if you stop getting a Social Security check? Like all of these, there are a number of things to think about and make sure that you have support from someone who understands them well. So I'll make sure that you have the slides on this and you talk with if you're helping somebody, you talk with your benefits planner about each of these things. And then I think one of the final things to remember, and I've said this through each of our sessions, is ensuring that you know who this team is and that you're really familiar with who to reach out to in your community, both that understand the service system, that have the disability support part of things, but also that really know the businesses, your micro enterprise development organizations, your small business administration offices, women's business centers, minority business centers. Be well connected if this is the kind of support you're helping to provide someone with. And then I think final thoughts are everything that we do, we should constantly be revisiting. Does it still fit this person? If we've launched it and they've gotten it moving and they want to grow it, whatever it is, do they still have the ability to fit their skills, their emerging and resilient changes in ideal conditions, their motivations, their whatever, support needs that they need to be successful, both financially, business centered and personally. And then is the business making money that's going to support the person and also be able to be sustainable? So takes us right to the end of our time. I'm definitely willing to stick around for a minute or two if you have questions. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of your learning related to self-employment. I know we have just packed so much in. And if you've heard about one topic that you're interested in, check out our series of trainings. They're free, they're available to you, they're easily accessible, they're self-paced. We'd love to see you registered there and taking advantage of some of those things. So, thanks so much for having us, Amy. It's been cool to be a part of this little adventure.
You so much, Julie. This is incredible information, and I know it might seem like a lot, but just to get on your radar sort of all these pieces and know that there's resources out there, like the Center on Self-Employment, to really help break it down. I think it's a wonderful option for a number of people. And so just to remind ourselves that it's an option for folks. So thank you so much, Julie. Thank you, Heather, for closed captioning, and the DD Council for their support with the closed captioning in the platform. Our next community of practice is going to be July 11th. More information to come on that, and hope to see you there. So thanks again, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.